Welcome to the Dave Darren Show. I've got Ronny Morris here on the show. How's it going there, Ronny?
How's it going? Need more light on me, or is it good?
No, I think try a little more light. Yeah, try that. Okay, try a
Turn
little
up,
more.
honey. I gotta turn it around, Dave, so you can see it.
Oh, there we go. There she's moving around. I see her. Does that mean I'm supposed to introduce you to my wife too? Is that what that means?
Yes.
This is not a thing on Craigslist for swapping wives and stuff like that. So, okay.
I think you got a business proposal there. Where are you located, buddy?
Right now I'm in Phoenix.
Once in July, and it was just like, wow.
Oh, is it?
The wall of heat that just like, bam.
It's all my. If you followed my show at all, that's all that hot air I'm blowing out of my head when I get pissed off and frustrated. And by the way, have you checked out my show? Because I know you dialed in here a little later. I think you were monitoring me. You think, man, do I really want to be on this guy's show?
I checked it out. I did.
Oh, you did? See that?
I do my homework.
Was there a little bit of hesitation? Let me ask you. Was there some hesitation?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm a guest guy, so we're all good.
Okay. I found you about 2 years ago, and I think I know how. You did something about the ice melts in the Arctic or something. Was that you?
That was me, yeah.
I thought so. Was that about 2 years ago? Because I forget when I saw it, but it was a couple years ago, I think, right?
About 2 years ago, I did a music video in collaboration with Greenpeace. I'd done a song for the album, but the album wasn't done yet. And I simply approached them, and they were working on this Save the Arctic campaign. Basically, very short. It was a campaign because the ice is melting on the North Pole, and everybody was talking about who has the right to that area. You know, you had Russia on one side, you had Canada, the US on the other side, and you even had small Denmark, where I'm from, that owns, the kingdom is partly Greenland, which goes way to the top. So everybody was discussing this whole political agenda on who owning the land. Somebody wanted to drill oil, somebody wanted to do other stuff. And the campaign really said that they wanted to save the Arctic, which meant leave it alone and keep it as a natural sanctuary. What I even learned, that there's a lot of marine animals up there that goes there under the ice and really, have a habitat up there, something that we humans don't know anything about. So the ice melting and allowing oil drilling and all other stuff like that would just really, scare the wildlife away.
Yeah. Would you say at this point that humans don't know a whole lot of fucking stuff? Would you say that? I would say that.
I would say that, and that's what I wrote even in another song called Windows, where I'm saying we're looking for life on Mars. We're reaching for life in the stars. But what about life around us right here that we have no clue about?
Yeah.
So typically humans.
How about we don't mess up any other planets until we fix this one up? I think that might be a good idea.
I think that's a good key, fix up the stuff that we're doing here even before we spread out.
All this time in this race where our worlds collide, we can grow like a drop in the ocean. We can multiply and bring hope to sail from shore. We can ride the wind, escape from the storm on the ocean's wave. We can climb We're built to last. We're living in a world made from glass. We're built to grow, but we're reaching for the world that we know. We're built to last. We're living in a world made from glass. We're built to grow, but we're reaching for the world that we know. Don't you know? To last. Well, don't you care? Well, don't you know? To grow. Well, don't you care?
But let's talk about your music. You got something new coming out. You got a new album coming out. We want to talk about that. And by the way, let's see what you got. You got your New York Yankees cap on there. You got Raise Up Your Cup. Let's
And-
get. I'm trying to get all these sponsors for my show. IHOP. Let's try to get them as sponsors of the Dave Darren Show. And who's this?
There's
Super.
And what super dry something. I bought it in New York. I like
well,
the shirt.
This is actually good. I'm in Arizona, like I told you, and it's like really hot here in the summer. It's also hot in the wintertime, and it's a dry heat. So not to go all Howard Stern on you, but super dry is what I call my wife's vagina. You got to have some moisturizer going on. When you live in Arizona, make sure you bring moisturizer with you if you want to be with your wife for an evening. All right. So, all right. So now I broke you fully into the show. So tell us about your music, your album. Tell us about what's going on in your life.
Yeah, that's a very honest, truthful story. You know, years ago, I'm an emerging artist like many others, was starting in my bedroom writing songs. And like a good old Hollywood movie, you know, I was approached by the labels the same way like everybody else, like, you know, no, thank you, we can't do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I set out to record this album and really quickly found out that, you know, even that technology allows a lot today that you can do yourself. I'm really not much of a technician guy. So I sold all my equipment. I kept the guitar, kept writing, and really just focused on being a songwriter. And I came across an Eagle Eye Cherry album. I knew him. He was out of Sweden, and he made a big hit in '98 called Save Tonight. And I found in the album cover sleeve, there's a guy's name, the producer, Adam Freeman. And I called him up out of the blue. I found his number somewhere. And I said, hey, Adam, I really want to, you know, I need a producer. I'm a songwriter. I'm not a technician. And he said, well, that's kind of a coincidence you called because I'm coming to Copenhagen tomorrow, where I was at. So I met up with Adam and we talked about my ideas. And he said, why don't you come up to my studio in Stockholm and we do one song just to see how it really goes. And we did that. And I bought a whole lot of equipment, guitars, rare guitars and amps, and put in the freaking truck and drove up there. Stupid me with summer tires in the winter, and it was blistering snow outside. So just even getting the car in front of the studio was a nightmare. Really a bad start. But anyway, we started recording, and we kept recording. And we came into the spring, and he said, do you want to do a full album, or do you want to do an EPK? And I said, if we're doing this, we might as well just do a full album. And he says, Ronny, you just need to know one thing. That's going to take time. A full album is something different than a single. And I said, I'm okay with that. And, you know, it went on forever. It seemed like forever. But the reality was this. I had no label. I had the money that I could spare from my daytime job. And Adam was okay saying, okay, we'll kind of chop it up. You know, whenever you have money to record, we'll continue. And we put it on hold until you have more money. And I said, that's fine with me. Let's keep it open that way. And Adam coming from Sweden and me from Denmark, though we spoke pretty good English, he said, Ronny, if we got to do this internationally, we got to get this language right. And he said, but I'm working with a guy named Brian Sperber in New York who did Three Doors Down and other bands. And he said, why don't you go to Brian's place in New York, and he can certainly help you through the lyrics and the pronunciation and everything. So I said, okay. I went to New York, knocked on Brian's door, said, "Hey, that's me, Ronny from Sweden. Can we record?" And so we did the album. We did the lyrics for all the songs in his apartment. He had a pro setup, and then back to Adam, and then it's kind of like escalated. I had this, idea, freaking crazy idea, listening to Pink Floyd, Beatles, Tom Petty, all the majors that I really loved, that I wanted to do something real. So even we could have recorded strings or had strings in the computer. But again, Adam said, why don't you wait 5 months until you have the money, and then we'll go down to Prague and we'll do real strings, because it sounds like that's the sound you want. And I said, if you can wait that long, that's fine for me. Let me go work my ass off and see if we can get more money for it. So I accumulated the money, got back to Adam, and we went to Prague, did the strings, had some guys there help us writing the piece of strings. And that's kind of like how we went on. It took bloody years, because I wanted to do it, the right way, and second of all, I never had a deadline. There was no label, there was no release date or anything, so it was just like, okay, we'll go as it goes.
That is an incredible story of connection, of communication, of faith in you and faith in yourself to pull all that off, right?
I kind of like had the idea from being in school. You know, if you do your homework correctly, then they can't ignore you forever. And you know, and it may take time, but if again, why are you doing this? Is it for other people's sake, or is this really for your own sake? And for me, it was a dream coming true, just creating the album. That was my dream.
Okay,
Um,
okay. Now I'm going to stop you there and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because I suffer with this frustration a lot. And you know it because you saw some of my recent rants. I really like doing this, by the way. I was a musician in the 70s and the early 80s. I played for 8 years. I survived in music, only music for 8 years, which would be harder to do now because back then, of course, I didn't have a house. I didn't have the wife with the dry vagina where I need the KY jelly on a daily basis. But all joking aside, though, now I do the show now to help out other musicians. But then when I don't see the unity in the United States, where we lack unity. In fact, we shouldn't even be called the United States anymore because everyone here celebrates Independence Day. And we're almost like too individually independent where we don't unify anymore. And that comes to the rock music genre a lot. Actually, country music is very unified. That's why they're strong in their
I agree.
genre. And hip
Yep.
hop is also very strong because the hip hop people stick together and they unite, and they're a
Yeah.
united organization of ideas and philosophy of life.
Yeah.
Rock
Yeah.
is all over the place. You don't see rock
Yeah.
musicians unify. You don't even see the old time rock musicians that are the mainstream artists uniting with the young guys to help them out. So
No,
so
I
I
agree.
do this show and I explode a lot because I get pissed off with the lack
Yeah.
of unity. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this. You did the album initially. You had a love for doing this. You had a drive and ambition to do it for yourself. How about going forward now? What's keeping you motivated? What keeps you going?
I think in the process of all that, you know, when we were kind of almost done with the album, I had, you know, I shipped out certain singles off the album demos, really, that ended up on TV shows.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, you know, I was got this call from Warner Brothers and others, not the label, but the TV production house, saying, "Hey, we got to use this music," and blah blah blah. Great.
Now,
Anyway,
how did they find it though? How did they initially
I
find it?
I was very naive, you can say. I found a book with all the addresses for the music supervisors, and I sent out the demo saying, "Hey, I'm working on this music. It's not done yet, but is that something for you?" And I was in London at the time. I was invited over to record on a little compilation with Ronnie Wood from the Rolling Stones. And all of a sudden, I get a call once I'm over there from a guy at Warner and ABC saying, "Hey, we got this single of yours. Do you really own the master for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." "Well, we have a TV show that's coming out in 2 weeks. Can we use the song?" "Yes, certainly."
Yeah.
So all of that in the middle of the process of recording kind of like became, you can say, kind of a success. You know, it was aired on TV, and all of a sudden my name was popping up in Google, all of that, and I wasn't even ready to release anything at that time. So at the time, I was more like, okay, it seems like LA is the place for me to be, but if there's more business in that area, and I had visited LA a few times before. So me being a newly dad at the time, I raised the question to my wife, do we want to move to LA? You know, it's certainly a better place maybe to be there. I always, when I connected with labels, they were always coming up with the same bullshit that, well, you don't live here, so we really can't help you. You need to connect with the local office. And I'm like, if I move there, well, then they have to deal with me. So anyway, long story short, we moved to LA, and that's where I started Morris Music, my own label, and found that out. But you asked me what kept my motivated going. That was your question.
Yeah.
My answer is, well, I really got sidetracked at that point, I think, in life, you know, where I started to focus on the response of what I was doing more than me for the love of creating it.
Okay, good, good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're bringing this up because I have that struggle. So keep going.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to
So,
interrupt you, but I like this.
and that happens for all of us. We kind of become, even like with likes today and everything like that, we kind of like become, what is it called? We want that response all the time, more than, you know, the love for creating what we do. And that certainly got me sidetracked. You know, even if I was at a Hollywood show, which I won for the song on the TV show, I could easily say to myself, well, it isn't a Grammy. And if it isn't a Grammy, then it's really not where I want to be. You know, kind of like putting myself down all the time. So all of a sudden, my focus was always on the outside. What is happening out of me instead of like, what am I producing out? And that left me depressed more than anything, you know, because what was the measure of success? What was the measure of what we were doing? And was kind of like ripping me from all the great emotions of creating, because all of a sudden I was looking to get acknowledgement. And that's a disease, I'm telling you. And even if you go to Hollywood or anywhere like that, they will tell you the same thing. That, you know, if you become kind of like a drug addict to acknowledgement, then you are not setting your own boundaries for success. And I lost myself in that. So even sitting there, radio started to pick it up in Europe, and all of a sudden I was over in the States. So the acknowledgement I could have had never arrived at my doorsteps, even that those people called me up and say, hey, Ronnie, they're playing you in Europe. Well, I was over there. So I really just put the whole thing on hold. I got super depressed, you know, and again, as you said before, all of a sudden life in the middle had changed. I had 2 kids now. I had a wife. I had a family to take care of. And all of a sudden, it was not about producing this thing that I loved. It was more about how do we survive? You know, how do we get money from this? And all of a sudden, it was never a question about the love for creating, but a really and a truthful question for everybody. How do we survive?
Absolutely.
This is going to cost you money. This is not earning you a dime. The music has changed in between. The guy that you talked to at Capitol Records yesterday, well, he was fired an hour later when he went out the door. And so everybody was struggling. Even though I got inside in the door and they could say, well, this is a freaking great idea. Wow, I love your passion. I love what you do. But by the way, I'm out of office on Monday. I don't even know what to do.
Wow.
So everybody was kind of like, the focus was certainly not on the creative side anymore for everybody. It was in a survival mode. Even people that had been in the business for 20, 25, 30 years were laid off. And it just created a poisoned environment where it was never about the product and the creativity anymore. It was about making a dime. And we were really all fighting for the crumbs on the table. You know, it was not even real money anymore. It was crumbs on the table. And so it was a weird time where everybody, whenever I met with people, they were discouraged, they were giving up, and the first 20 minutes of every conversation I ever had was people telling me about how hard it was. Nobody ever came with a solution. Nobody would ever come to a meeting and say, listen to me, Ronnie, I've been in the game 20 years, now I will tell you how this is done. Nobody. Because everybody was suffering. Me coming back to Sweden was a lot for me compared to a lot of American artists. I could come back to a home, secure country where I could get myself a daytime job. I could run Morris music on the side. I could focusing on publishing where money was still being made because music and media was still being sold as a product for real money. If you want to use the song in the TV show, great, I'm going to send you a check for $3,000. Thank you. You know, but the whole label side were in the dumpster. So sitting home here, I kind of like full circle came back to, okay, what was my focus? Well, my original focus I wanted to create an album. I had the love for music. When I really kind of like scaled it down and got rid of all the freaking noise, then it was very simple. It was me with a guitar, a cup of coffee, a piece of paper, some good friends surrounding me, recording music that I liked whenever it was possible. So I called up Adam again and I said, I'm back from my U.S. adventure. Should we finish this now? And he said, well, I've been waiting for your call for a long time, but I was just giving you space enough to see where you wanted to take this. And I said, I'm ready, you know, fuck all that glamour, fuck all that red carpet, all that Hollywood, all that bullshit label stuff. I really don't care about it, and I don't want to be part of it. I just want to sit in your studio when the snow is coming down with a good cup of tea and focus on what's really important, and that's the music.
mentioned, you gave the advice to be centralized to where you are and focus on that area. Where do you go? Where do you go from there, though? How do you? Because you cannot, especially in Phoenix, the same fans are not going to come and see you show after show after show unless you're like a guy that can write a song every single night and every single show is unique and different. But a lot of bands can't do that. So how do you
And
establish?
that's where but I really think we come down to the old school days. And
What
that's
is
what
that?
we forgot, We forgot that when I'm watching the Johnny Cash movie, we forgot that Johnny Cash was sitting in a car together with Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis and his future wife. So again, a small label, a boutique label with four that became great artists. But you have to remember the time they were not the legends that we know of today. But in order to split cost, they worked as a team, like a
Wow.
bicycling team in Tour de France. Hey, we're four bands. Okay, if four bands can collect more people in for a show a night than one band. Can we work together in that? Yes. Step ego aside. Okay. Can we rent a van together and split the cost and the gas? Yes, we can. So that means that instead of just being one guy, now we are a four-piece, collecting all the people in. Some will come that night to watch their favorite band, but still be exposed to the other artists as well.
But we do that in the United States. In fact, every venue in Phoenix, Arizona, there's Joe's Grotto, there's Blues
Hmm?
Bar. Every single one of these venues has four bands playing per night. So
Yes.
we do that, of course. Now, what are we missing from that equation? The what are we missing from that? Because we're doing
So
that.
today we have something else. You and I talking over Skype. They didn't have that at the time, which means that I can be playing a show tomorrow here in Sweden and invite you to watch the show online. So we have to make ourselves available wherever we are, wherever we go online, so people can follow even from the comfort of their couch. Some people may not, and that's the same thing again. Don't be trusting that fucking like thing. People are watching even when they don't like it. They may not even push their finger down on the button saying like, but they're still watching. So I think it's about one, creating content, creating an atmosphere, and creating an environment. So you're asking me, very, very practical, low scale. I have a friend here in Copenhagen. He has a winery. And I said, what comes together with wine? Music. Good.
Right.
Could we invite people in, 40 people, for an exclusive sit down night where they taste good French wine and they have some food? And Ronny Morris will play some of his songs in between and talk about the music. See, to years ago, I would have said that that would have been a stupid idea because my ego would have allowed me to think that even I wasn't playing Rose Bowl or Wembley Arena, then it wasn't a real thing.
Hmm.
Well, that's bullshit because it's all about connecting one person at a time with what I do and also allow myself just to be happy to play my music, and it's the good snowball effect. A snowball doesn't travel fast most times, it travels very slow. So you have to just go out there and keep creating it and honestly be creative. Okay, I'm playing this set tonight. How can I rent a curtain? Can I put some lights down? Can I put in some candles? Can I do whatever? Because I think that that's even more important that we create an experience. When I certainly sit down with music, or MTV were perfect at it back in the day with their unplugged sessions. And that was a small environment, but it became nothing but small because people were watching it on TV.
Right.
So I think that even more creative we can be, and today, even the smallest concert can be monitored around the world if we go live, or even if we stream it, or we film it, or whatever.
I like the idea of bringing the live set to the viewing audience. And I think it's unique because MTV now no longer exists with the big music format that they used to have. However,
But what did MTV just come out with the other day? That they're going to bring back the unplugged sessions. So I think that there's something that we moved away from that we kind of now understand. Well, that was a great format. That
yes.
that worked, you know. and it's timeless. So let's put that back. Like it's like one of these TV shows that can run forever. The world may change around it, but people still like that TV show. And I think that that's the mistake we do sometimes. We get caught up in that the world changed around us, thinking that we need to change as well. And I think that there's some things that don't have to change because why? Because it works. We need to understand one thing. The thing about an instant hit does not exist for many. And that's why we're always running and chasing that fucking instant hit. Because it's like playing the lottery.
Yeah.
But the majority of people and the majority of businesses and whatever, that success comes slowly. It doesn't come overnight. And I think that that's what we need to understand. Even myself, I'm also talking to myself now, that we are exposed on TV that instant success is the right thing. But that's not the reality. The reality is that Depeche Mode recorded 5 albums before they were ever introduced into the States. Over in Europe, they had plenty of hits. And that's the same goes for Beatles. They were playing constantly in Hamburg, even before the Brits knew what was going on. And I think that for me, and even younger inspiring artists, that they need to understand that reality. One, create good songs, create good content, create a perfect environment, be creative, and keep doing it. I think there's so many artists, we only see them once. They get a hit, poof. All of a sudden, it becomes glamour. It's like a Christmas tree fucking lighting up. Woo! But they don't have a plan for how to continue because they were chasing that once instant hit. Now they're chasing the instant hit again. And I think more so that more bands should be focusing on the marathon. How do I do a little here, a little there, a little there, a little there? I can tell you with my album, we certainly have not taken on the approach of an instant hit, and we don't even care for it. We have a release plan that we have spread out over the next year. People will come to me from labels and say, well, Ronny, you need that one hit. I don't give a shit. I don't need your hit. I have an album of songs that I like. I'm so lucky that a lot of people connect differently with the album. That just means to me that there's no one song on the album. There's different flavors, and people like different flavors. There's no one flavor that fits all. So it means that I'm happy today not being at a label, because had I been on a label, I would have been put in the massage chair to believe that I needed one instant hit. Now I created videos for 5 songs on the album. Had I been on a major label, they would never allow it. But I'm like, screw you, I don't care. We created videos for 5 songs on the album. We have a release plan that, is spread out over a year. And this is going to take time.
Trying to ignite the feeling. I'm looking at my wounds, not healing. Gazing at the world through windows, dealing with the pain that follows. Looking at the world, stop dreaming. Fire in the sky, no meaning. Gazing at the world through windows, dealing with the pain that follows.
One artist that I really admire that way, that's Norah Jones. In the little back office of Sony, there was a jazz label, Blue Note. Never really sold anything. I don't even think the guys on Sony pretty much cared for Blue Note and who worked there. Then they had a little lady coming in, playing the piano. And they said, okay, let's do this little song. We don't really have any expectations. You're quite good, and it's a lovely album. Let's do it. They released the album. No instant hit. There was no expectations for an instant hit. But what they never knew is that people started bringing this album around to friends because it was so lovely playing that album when they lit candles at home and they were sitting with friends enjoying good wine or listening to music. And then the snowball suddenly started slowly to grow. And all of a sudden, the people up at the major office were thinking, what's happening with the freaking numbers? And who is Blue Note, by the way? Well, that's our guys. They're working down in the corner. Did they release anything? Yeah, they did. But why they're having success? I don't know. And even the people at Blue Note were like scratching their head thinking, okay, what's going on here? We didn't do that much marketing. No, they didn't. But people connected with the album. And over 2 years, it went over to the majors. Because the majors are always chasing that one instant freaking hit. Now the numbers were there to prove them that they need to let go of everything pop at they had that were running after. This little lady on the piano had something. So they were chasing the money. Not understanding why, probably, but they were chasing it. And then it's always easy to say, well, you're so great. Oh, yo, we always knew that from the start. Fuck you. You didn't know anything from the start. And Norah Jones ended up being one of the best-selling acts of all time. If young people can learn from that story and understand that, then they, rather than sprinting, they should do a marathon. People die during the sprints. They lose focus, they tap away, they lose themselves, and they become too focused on everything on the outside that has to fulfill them, rather than just being a creating machine.
Until the beat of the drums to hold on to. I love you, it's written in my heart, it's written in the stars, we're all is one.
Stumbled on a point, not stumbled on it. Obviously, you've studied this and you've got a good grip on this. So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
I think it's like, yeah, some people are always fascinated by tempo. And I think it's the whole society disease. We're so focusing on sprinting. The faster, the better. Well, if you're running a marathon too quickly, then the guy that you are passing right in the start, he's going to come up to you. And where you're dying out, he's going to run slowly past you, smiling, saying, "Are you having a hard time?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm dying over here." Okay, well, see you at the finish line. And then he just continues.
Right.
Okay, so if you really have to be careful what your structure is, and your plan has to be right. And that's not to say it's not good to sprint, but if you keep at a steady pace, you'll be more able, as you say, also to sprint when it's needed. And I think that that's the whole thing about society today. And I certainly am guilty of it too, and feel it. And a funny thing is, the album I created, Sweet Silence, was there all along to tell me to stop. But even when I was standing with the album cover at hand, I thought that this image was created for everybody else but me. And I was wrong. The picture was created for me. It's almost like the universe, or whatever you want to call it, put an image in my head saying, remember this, important. But again, I became ill of the same disease. Moving to California, sprinting same page as everybody. And people died. Some people died, and we see that every day. Popping pills, popping everything to stimulate the next mile, not thinking what will happen after the next mile. I don't know. I just need to run this fucking next mile. And I think even more so in the creative, not even more so, that's in all businesses. But as a musician today, yes, be smart. Have your job so you don't stress about finance. Schedule your interest in music. If it's your Thursday evening, whatever, schedule it. Make sure that your family are aware that you are present at all the other days, but at that Thursday evening, that's your time. And once you have that time, you map it out. What is my plan and task at hand? Well, it's this. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. If you are limited means, then be creative with the limited means. Depeche Mode even did it back in the day. Well, we don't play drums, we don't play guitars, what the fuck are we going to do? Well, there's something called a synthesizer and a sampler. Okay, can we use that? Yes, we can certainly use that. Okay, that's good. We'll record some on the table, do whatever, and that is what we today know as Depeche Mode filling up stadiums with 55,000 people at night. So there's also beauty to being limited, as long as you don't make it a stopping point, but make it as an accelerator to be even more creative.
Wow, inspirational, motivational, tremendous talking to you today. It really is. And obviously, this has been great. I think it's great for me. It's great for a young audience. It's great for an established audience or musician. It's tremendous. You really got me thinking about stuff, and hopefully you got a lot of young bands thinking about what you've said, because I think I
just think the beauty today is that, and that's really what we have to acknowledge. If you and I wanted to start a radio or starting a TV show, well, back in the day, we had to ask everybody for it. We had to go to radio stations. Can we use your studio? No, fuck off. Can we be on the FM band? No, fuck off. Can we be in the TV show? No, fuck off. Today, you don't have to ask anybody. You'll take your fucking tripod, put your phone on, whatever, got some freaking equipment, and be creative. How is my location going to be? Well, I shoot this into my apartment, but I make it look good. I find a 14-year-old who is learning, and he's helping me with all the details on the computer, making it look good. You know, so I think today that if you are creative, you could do so much that was not even possible 15 years ago. And you don't even have to allow yourself to ask any network if you can be distributed through them. You have what they paid trillions of dollars for back in the day. You have the internet. And remember, it's the same thing as they were doing back in the day. Just because they made a TV show doesn't necessarily mean that anybody was watching. They were putting it out there, they were putting it out there, they were putting it out there. Or sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. That's the reality of life. But with the internet today, that is exactly what you have at hand.
I'm a creative guy. The only thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do that balcony show, because I have a feeling if I do a balcony show, my wife's going to hang a noose, stick my head in it, and throw me off the balcony. So I'm not doing the balcony show, all right? I'm sticking away from that one. Before we close the show out, tell me about where the album is found. By the way, it's called Sweet Silence. And where do people locate it? Where do they find it?
They locate it everywhere on all the phone, wherever they stream their music. If it's Spotify, Amazon, on through their phone company, wherever. We should be everywhere by now. Okay. And I just want to show you this roadmap that I created for myself, which is actually the album cover, so you can see it here. And that is really what you and I just talked about. A guy in the middle of the street doing everything like everybody else, but all of a sudden he's hearing something else and he listens to the ground, finding back into the bubble. What was it really about?
I thought he fell off the balcony, but okay.
And Steve Thompson, when we were doing it, I showed it to him in the studio, and he said, well, is he about to have sex on the street, or what's happening?
Yeah, he's screwing a manhole, right? Is that what he's doing? All right, Ronny, you're tremendous. I look forward to your music. I'm sure the audience is really digging your music because we've played a bunch of songs throughout the interview here. Again, Ronny, thanks so much for being on the show. You've been a tremendous influence to me personally, and hopefully some of the young bands who are listening to what you're talking about and absorbing it into those little tiny heads. Hopefully they got a lot more insight to what will make their heads expand and their music expand.
If we have just turned a little inch, then we've done something good, Dave.
I think you're right. Ronny, thanks a lot for being on the show, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
I leave my light turned on. When I lay down and rest my head, the silent prayer tells me to hold on to. I love you, it's written in my heart, it's written in the stars, for all it's worth. Until the beat of the drums, my heart will carry you on. And in the glance of the stars, I leave my light turn on for you this way. I leave my light turn on, I leave my light turn on, in the name of what's above, I cling on to something to hold on to. I love you, it's written in my heart, it's written in the stars, for all it's worth. Yeah. I was trying not to look at you on that.